No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 25. And you won't hear about this in the captured MSM, but only Elon Musk's X is exposing the violence and hate being spread by the British hard left. As Southport rioters are today jailed for nearly 2 years, one for simply getting up in a police officer's face, the Labour Party's Dartford City Councillor, a Labour Party representative, Ricky Jones, has this afternoon been arrested for this call at a protest that the BBC said was all about peace, broadcast on X. We really know about that because of X, which leftists want to ban. I wonder why. Also coming up on the show today, as top hard left figures admit the so-called far-right protests planned for yesterday across the UK were a hoax, I'll expose the hate and violence being spread at these apparently peaceful demos and why the MSM is choosing to ignore the truth. Then my superstar panel, Nick Buckley and Jasmine Birtles, weigh in on two-tier Keir's divided Britain. Plus, in an exclusive Outspoken interview, football legend and free speech warrior Matt Le Tissier speaks out live. And he'll be sticking around today for our uncancelled after show, which you don't want to miss. You can register to watch on our own website at www.outspoken.live. Given the tyranny of censorship and the pressure the UK government is now putting on these big tech platforms, there has never been a more important time for you to support the independent media. It's just £5 a month and you get 30 minutes of extra content every single weekday, and it's completely uncensored. But now, let's go. So if you saw the front page of every major newspaper in the UK today, including, unbelievably, the Daily Mail and the Daily Express, you'd think that yesterday's far-left protests were simply a haven of peace. And this is why you cannot trust the MSM and why we must fight back against the censorship this authoritarian Labour government wants to institute. Because thanks to Elon Musk's X, we now know what was really being said and done at these so-called peace marches. Shock horror. That man, the man advocating to cut the throats of people who disagrees with, is an elected Labour Party councillor in Dartford. But that incident didn't stop BBC reporter Henry Lowe enthusing that the event in Walthamstow was full of chanting and clapping as folk were preaching a message of peace. Well, I call bullshit on that. Because breaking right now, Jones has been arrested by the Met Police, clearly desperate to prove we are not operating in a two-tier world. As Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe wrote on X, if an elected Reform politician had been calling for throats to be cut, the condemnation would be rightly overwhelming. I'm sure hundreds of Labour MPs are currently drafting their statements calling out this disgusting behaviour. Personally, I don't want to live in a country where anyone is arrested for making a bad comment or for retweeting some footage of a protest or reporting what they may have heard online. This is not the sort of world we want to live in. But there was much more from the so-called peace protest last night. Don't they look peaceful? So peaceful, so much harmony there. Likewise, in Croydon, where authorities wanted to do all they could to distance the egregious violence with any protests. As the brilliant independent journalist Andy No posted, this is not linked to a protest, claims the police in London, as Muslim Patrol militants riot in Croydon following false rumours of far-right protests. They are trashing the streets of Croydon tonight in South London, he said. And yes, they were. Just awful.
Why are they trashing the place? This is the only place in England today I've seen getting trashed. What is going on? Why are they trashing the...
But as political commentator Alex Armstrong wrote, when the far left attack emergency workers, it's anti-social behaviour. Two-tier gaslighting is in full swing. What's probably more important is to work out why the hell the MSM and political establishment spent 48 hours gaslighting the nation into believing mass far-right protests were about to break out anyway, which saw businesses closed and homes boarded up. And then nothing eventuated. Sly News was actually disappointed.
So far, the counter-protesters are by far outnumbering, well, I say outnumbering, I mean there's no evidence yet that our teams on the ground have seen of any far-right activity. So the counter-protesters have got no protests to counter at the moment.
But it was left to that cretinous Nick Lowles from the very hateful organisation, ironically titled Hope Not Hate, to reveal what was really going on. He wrote, yes, the list, which was a list of fake far-right protests, was a hoax. But just look at the front pages of today's paper. An anti-racist message has been transmitted to millions of homes this morning. The media, the MSM, has been played. And I won't be played. So I want to share you a very thoughtful tweet actually from the former Brexit Party MEP Martin Daubney. And he wrote, who sent the Telegram riot message? Last night, thousands of counter-protesters took to the streets. There were no protests to counter, based on anonymous Telegram message saying immigration lawyers and asylum charities would be targeted. Who sent the message and why? Because none of the 100 riots happened. No immigration officers were targeted. Millions were spent on policing these non-events. So who sent the message? It may have been the far right, quote unquote. It may have been someone opposed to the quote unquote far right. It may have been a troll. Until we know the answer to this, the conspiracy theories will run rife. I'd like to see the same rigour applied to tracking down the misinformation that caused the Southport riot. Who sent the message that put Britain on red alert? But do I believe the MSM will investigate? Absolutely not. It doesn't fit their narrative. We are being gaslit. As Tom Harris posted on X, this focus on Elon Musk and social media in the midst of widespread rioting reminds me of when Lee Rigby was murdered by Islamists and MPs queued up to warn against the threat of Islamophobia. And Fraser Myers from Spiked Online added, or when David Ames was murdered by an Islamist and MPs tried to make the entire focus about people being rude to them on the internet. And when Slippery Starmer was asked today about whether immigration could even be discussed, he wouldn't even entertain it, instead continuing with his authoritarian rhetoric.
If we have indeed turned a corner and seen an end to the violence, is now the time to engage with the underlying tensions that are in communities over the issue of immigration?
The first priority is safety and security of our communities. And yes, last night was much better than was expected, but we are not going to give up on our efforts here. That's why it's very important that I continue my discussions, coordinating with law enforcement, with police leaders, to make sure we've got the right officers in the right place, to keep pushing on the criminal justice response. I was very keen that we're able to demonstrate that if you're involved in disorder, within days you'll be in the criminal justice system, and some people starting long terms of imprisonment. That needs to continue, and so that is my sole focus.
The woke Stasi, as Elon Musk has described it, is now running the UK. Police are arresting folk for sending a tweet. This is terrifying. To react now, let me bring in today's superstar panel. And I'm delighted to be joined by two folk who very much champion free speech, the British charity worker and political commentator Nick Buckley, MBE, and the personal finance expert, speaker and author of 38 books, Jasmine Birtles, who is the founder of Money Magpie. Great to have you both here. Welcome to Outspoken. And Nick Buckley, wow. If it wasn't for Elon Musk's X, we would have had no idea that a Labour Party councillor was actually suggesting that we should cut the throats of people who he disagrees with. We'd have no idea about that because all the mainstream media, Woke ITV, the British Bashing Corporation, the Daily Mail, the Express, they all said that these protests were full of peace and harmony last night.
And that's why governments always need to keep control of the media. Otherwise, messages, news and stories will be released that are not approved. And we cannot have non-approved stories going out in the UK. Otherwise, the authoritarian grip on the people will weaken. And that's exactly what I call it Twitter. I won't call it X. That's exactly what Twitter has done. By Elon buying it a few years ago. He's been able to show the people exactly what's happening in the country.
Jasmine, the thing is, right, I don't actually want any of these folk arrested, actually. I think free speech in the UK is in peril. But the problem is, as soon as Keir started talking about this new authoritarian approach where everyone had to be punished, well, then the left, the hard left, has to be punished too.
Yes, agreed. It's a question of equality and fairness. And, you know, even the smallest child can see when something is unfair. And, you know, I agreed. I think most of us, those of us who believe in free speech, and like you, I also believe in free speech, we're not, frankly, that bothered about some, you know, nasty tweet. I mean, everybody, you know, it's like tweeting badly is like sort of being rude about your friends behind their back, except that they can hear it, you know, with Twitter. And that's part of life. It's not pleasant, but, you know, it's part of life. But as you say, when people are arrested, and chillingly, as we're hearing, we could be arrested simply for reporting on a riot, or, you know, maybe filming it with a phone, putting it on Twitter, on Facebook or on Instagram, one of those, we could actually be arrested purely for that. Well, that's Orwellian at the very best, you know. So we do need to fight for the right to have free speech, whether you're left or whether you're right. There is an element, certainly, if somebody says, I hate this person, this is their name, this is their picture, this is where they live, let's all go around with machetes and kill them. That's a whole different thing. That's genuinely dangerous. But just saying we hate these people, I just don't like the way they look. Well, you know, that's human nature, sadly. So I agree. We need to have equality, and we need to have reasonableness, reasonable fairness, and understanding the way human beings speak and act and really do think.
And Nick Buckley, also to protect us from genuine crime, from genuine terror, from genuine violence, which, let's be honest, is very often not from a keyboard warrior. I mean, I receive hundreds of death threats a month. Actually, if the police were to investigate all of them, they'd have no time to actually focus on murderers and rapists and terrorists and actually all of the criminals who desperately need to be locked up. So I'm very concerned about this mission creep under an authoritarian Labour government who have used these riots almost immediately to crack down on free speech. And the thing is, Nick, it's all diversion anyway, because I swear that the riots were not to do with disinformation. By the time any riots started, everyone knew that the 17-year-old who has now been charged for murdering those 3 beautiful young girls in Southport was a 17-year-old son of Rwandan immigrants. That was known by that point, Nick. But the issue is that we're being gaslit into believing that it was the misinformation that caused the riots. Actually, we're angry, Nick. We're angry about the fact that we have been lied to about mass immigration for 2 decades now.
Exactly. I'd say it's longer than 2 decades. Labour are taking the brunt of this at the moment because they've been in power. They've been in power 4 weeks, 5 weeks. What a time to gain power. But this has been building up for decades and decades and decades. We keep telling our politicians we want change, we want less immigration, we want less immigration, and they keep promising less immigration. So we vote for them, they get into power and they increase immigration. Then the next party comes along and they say, we'll reduce immigration to the tens of thousands. You know, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And they all keep lying to us. And the pressure is increasing. And it was only going to take a spark. It was going to take the final straw to break the camel's back. And that lunatic in Southampton was the straw that broke the camel's back. He could have been anybody. And the people have now said, we've had enough. And I think on top of that, the freedom that Twitter and X gives us has also contributed to this, because we saw what was going on. We've seen what's going on. We see the names of the people who are raping people, killing people. We get told they're illegal immigrants. We've got the guy in London pushing someone almost under the YouTube, a train on the underground, and within the country months. We're seeing it all the time. And the excuse that you're wrong doesn't work anymore now, because we're seeing it all the time.
Exactly, and they can try and bury it as much as they want. But as you say, we see the crimes. We know who a vast majority of the crimes are being committed by. Jasmine, can we just talk a little bit about what was actually going on yesterday, though, and whether it was a false flag that there were going to be these 100 so-called far-right protests? Because none of them emerged, Jasmine, none of them emerged whatsoever. And you've now got Nick Lowles, who runs this charity Hope Not Hate. By the way, I think it's absolutely ludicrous that they can be clarified as a charity, given that they are an organisation which I believe spreads hate against folk like me. But that's slightly beside the point in this case, because he has admitted, he's actually come out on X and admitted this was a hoax. But great news, because the hoax resulted in all of this really positive media coverage. So the MSM was played here, weren't they?
Well, they were played. They may have been complicit. Who knows? Because they, if I'd been, in mainstream and been looking at it, I'd want to know, how do we know that these are going to happen? Because 100 riots, that's a lot to organise. So you would expect to see websites, you'd expect to see chat rooms, you expect all sorts. And if there wasn't anything like that, and it sounds like there wasn't, there was just this, as you say, this one message saying, oh, there's going to be a riot, it's going to be a bit of a ruck on Wednesday night, and the whole of the media went, oh right, absolutely, this is clearly gospel news, we'll all go there. I'm surprised that they didn't do any of their own due diligence, and as you say, it got lots of headlines on all the front pages, including, as you say, surprisingly, the Daily Mail and the Daily Express and whatever, who wanted to be part of it. And it did remind me, as I think it was Martin Daubney said, of the COVID times, yes, when the mainstream media was paid to push the same narrative. So that's kind of honestly the way it feels, that they're being paid either by government, or it could be by other corporate organizations or individuals, very, very, very rich individuals. Because to be honest now, as you know, with newspapers being on their knees, really, it doesn't take a lot of money to get them to do your will. You can pay them in a few thousand to put something big on the front cover, and for some people that's pocket change.
And the thing is, Nick Buckley, even if they're not being directly paid, actually what it is the tyranny of woke advertising agencies. So newspapers like the Daily Mail, like the Express, like the Sun, are so terrified of being branded right-wing, then experiencing the sorts of ad boycotts that X, the social media platform, is currently experiencing, and Elon Musk has threatened these, or he's going to file them now, these antitrust lawsuits, or closer to home, my former employer GB News. They're so terrified of these ad boycotts. What that means is they are desperate to be seen to be responsible, which is why we received all of this coverage, which meant actually they couldn't do their job and tell the truth, that actually there was a lot of hate and a lot of violence being spread on these far left protests, which, by the way, they don't even describe as far left, do they? They love describing everything as far right, but these were just peace protests.
These were anti-racist protests. So we have the far right, who are the evil Nazis, and then we have the good guys called the anti-racist protesters. Even the narrative around how we name them is so biased by itself. Now, when we look at things like this, we need to always think, who benefits from this? Who benefited from this hoax last night? And that, in most cases, will point to the people who probably perpetrated the hoax in the first place. The people that benefited were the anti-racist protesters. They managed to go to the places they wanted to for police protection, to be able to scream and shout, and then claim we drove away all the Nazis. Those Nazis were too afraid to come on our street because we were here. And then I just want to jump back to the Labour politician, that the councillor who's just been arrested. Two things that this only just happened, so many people haven't noticed yet. The woman stood behind him has got a jacket from Amnesty on. Yes. She looks like she's an employee from Amnesty, and she's clapping the death threats. Yeah. And then the councillor at the end, after he's done all the Free Palestine stuff, he then goes, "God bless everybody." Yeah. God bless everybody. You've just incited the crowd to murder people. God bless everybody.
To cut their throats. Cut their throats. And Jasmine, isn't that an incredible point from Nick? Because I was thinking that earlier. This is actually the truth now about a lot of these middle-class leftists who support Amnesty International and organizations like that. Actually, their rhetoric is far, far more extreme than anything we see on the right.
Well, it's an interesting thing to see that it really isn't a question of left or right. Those who consider themselves on the left and those who consider themselves on the right often, impute all kinds of evil to the other side. But it really doesn't matter which alleged side you're on. If you're full of hatred, and I agree, the idea of hope not hate immediately tells me that they're full of hatred. But anybody who is full of hatred will come out with this kind of stuff, and it doesn't matter if you think you support Gaza or you think you support Israel, if you think you support leftist ideology or think you support rightist ideology. On both sides, you've got decent, normal people who understand how to behave and how to think about their fellow man. But you also have these ones who have absolute violent hatred in their hearts. I think the only difference here is that, according to the media, according to the establishment, it's the people on the right only who have these hateful thoughts. But what we're seeing from, as you say, thanks to X, thanks to various platforms, that people on the left have just as much hatred in their hearts, and quite often it spills over into quite serious, nasty violence, even if that's just verbal violence.
Well, of course, before these riots sparked by the Southport incident, if you actually look at all the street protests, Nick Buckley, it has been driven by the left. So Black Lives Matter, Just Stop Oil, Insulate Britain, Extinction Rebellion, the pro-Hamas protesters, all left-wing, effectively. So there is two-tier, not just with policing, but also the way that these incidents are covered.
Of course, and it's so obvious now. Let's start with Black Lives Matter. Police officers taking the knee. Keir Starmer taking the knee.
Yes.
Sending this signal that we support them all. Extinction Rebellion, I believe it was. Police officers skateboarding with protesters having a jolly time. Senior police officers walking up to people blocking the streets, saying to them, "Are you comfortable? Do you want us to go get you all a cup of tea?" And it's like, Where does this stop? Then looking at
They were
the
dancing.
Palestine.
They were dancing with the Extinction Rebellion protests. Remember that?
Absolutely. And then getting them to court and judges saying, well, we understand what you're doing. You're trying to save the world. You're really superheroes. So don't do it again and get out my courts.
Yeah.
And then look at the Free Palestine. You know, a foreign problem on a foreign country on a foreign continent concerning foreign people is brought to this country. Part of it is anti-Semitic, not all of it. Part of it is anti-Semitic. Part of the reason why we have Queers for Palestine and Socialist Worker marching alongside them is because they've all got the same aim, which is to pull down the West so we can build a utopia.
Yeah.
And these people are allowed to get away with that.
I know.
But God
Queers
forbid,
for Palestine, though. I every time I hear Queers for Palestine, I just think chickens for KFC. These people are insane.
They don't know. I don't think they are insane. They know what they're doing, and what they're doing is saying to themselves, "My enemy's enemy is my friend." So if Hamas and Islamists can pull down the West, that means us socialists can build the communist utopia. I know why they're doing it, but going back to the police. But if you have demonstrations with white working class people, scum, Nazis, no excuses. Get the police riot gear straight away. Never give them the benefit of the doubt. Get in there, crackheads straight away, because they're always a problem. And
Yes.
that's the two-tier policing.
And the mainstream media has worked so hard over the past week to sometimes actually commit almost mental arithmetic in order to justify violence by Muslim groups, because they always want to say that there is a reason why this violence is acceptable, and also make the point that actually it is only people of colour who feel scared on the streets at the moment, which, let's just be honest, is not a reality. And it's very difficult to talk about this, and certainly no one in the mainstream media will. But a lot of crime committed against white folk in the UK is committed by people of colour, and there's a lot of reasons why white people should feel scared on the streets. But if you also look at some of the scenes over even just the past 24 hours, you'll realise that very often our country no longer looks like the England that we fell in love with. So I've got a couple to show you. This was Newcastle. And then Sheffield. So these are just not the sorts of scenes that make folk feel safe, are they, Jasmine? And that's why lots of Jewish people I speak to feel completely terrified to walk the streets at the moment. And you would if you were walking into that mob of pro-Hamas supporters, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, yes. And it is something that does seem to be going forward and is not being checked or really properly questioned by the media, that many Jewish people do feel nervous about being in this country, about going on the streets. And so do just ordinary white people. I have a friend in Essex, for example, who emailed me a couple of days ago saying he was thinking of going with his family, he's got 2 small children, to live in Costa Rica. Because he doesn't feel that Britain is a place that he wants to bring them up in anymore. And he was asking me, about tax and earning money and things there, because he can work online. So if that's just one person, but I suspect that there are quite a lot of people around the country, not just white people, but black people as well. I mean, I have friends who are immigrants. They paid to be here. They went through all sorts of hoops to be here. And they're very unhappy about what's happening to this country. Like you, Dan. I mean, you would be a good example. You're an immigrant, let's be honest. And you paid, you did all the right things to get
Well,
to
see, I always actually correct people on this, Jasmine, because I was born a British citizen, you see, because both of my parents were born in the UK, and so were my grandparents. This has become a heated issue, actually, Jasmine, over the past couple of weeks, because Albiam Ancona, who is a friend of mine, recently sacked from GB News, was trying to say, Dan, well, you're an immigrant too. And my point was, well, would you describe Boris Johnson as an immigrant because he happened to be born overseas? No, you wouldn't. And I've been a British citizen, obviously, right from day dot. But the other thing is that what happens with these stories is actually the true Islamist threat is covered up for almost any reason. And yet, I know it's not in the UK, but this absolutely chilling story over the past 24 hours that Taylor Swift, the international superstar who attracts lots of young girls to her concerts in stadiums, has had to cancel 3 massive gigs in Vienna this week because of a serious ISIS plot to blow up the stadium. And as Martin Daubney tweeted there, the real terrorists barely make the headlines. 3 Taylor Swift concerts cancelled in Vienna due to Islamic State terror threats. Remind me how many children are blown up at gigs by the far right, how many teachers forced into hiding, how many soldiers killed. And look, I know it's in Vienna, but it happened here, Nick. It happened at the Ariana Grande concert. Come on, where is the real terror threat? Where should the focus be? We know it's on Islamist extremism. And to say that in this climate will see you be branded as far right.
Of course, the Manchester Arena bombing was on my street. I heard the bomb go off, and you hear lots of noises in the city centre. And I rolled over in bed and went back to sleep. It was only next morning I realised what had gone on. But I heard the explosion in my flat in the city centre on my street. Yes, Islam is a threat. Our terrorist threat level at the moment is there because of Islam and Islam terrorists. But that doesn't mean it's just Muslim people who are violent and committing crime and killing other people. All groups, all nations, all people have violent people within the groups. And I heard from a colleague's friends yesterday who are Muslim women working in Manchester city centre, and they were scared to go home because they had hijabs on, and they were scared to go home. What, they're going to identify me as a Muslim. So the fear is throughout the whole country. And the reason why we have fear is because that's how politicians get to control us. We've been saying to the Muslim community for decades, you're under threat, Islamophobia is rampant, and you need protecting. If you vote for me, I'll protect you. And we've been doing it with every other identity groups, the gay groups, the Bangladeshi groups, the black groups, and we've been splitting each other up into tribes. And we're getting to the stage now where this is tribal warfare.
Yes.
It doesn't have to make sense anymore now, because when you're scared, you will go with your tribe.
And one of Labour's biggest threats, by the way, now, is the fact that they're actually losing the Muslim vote. We saw, didn't we, Jess Phillips, who has been so desperate to try and justify Muslim violence in her constituency this week, and it's because she was very nearly beaten by George Galloway's Workers' Party. So the Labour Party know actually there's a big electoral threat for them on the left, because we're going to start seeing more sectarian groups on the Muslim side entering politics. We saw 5 of them in Westminster after this election. But look, I want to move on now to talk about Nigel Farage versus James O'Brien. This is an ongoing feud which has really erupted this week. And even though Nigel has made it very, very clear that he's furious with O'Brien's characterization that he is in some way, either in part or in totality, responsible for sparking the Southport riots, a claim which is not backed up, by the way, in any form, with any form of evidence. Well, James O'Brien has gone on LBC and, surprise, surprise, doubled down. Watch this.
Racist liars responsible There'll be attempts by the racist liars responsible for the riots that we're seeing at the moment, the Farage riots, as you might like to call them.
At no point in the last week or in the previous 30 years have I ever encouraged the use of violence. Have I ever encouraged the use of anti-democratic means? We have LBC presenters like James O'Brien calling them the Farage riots. I have had nothing to do with any form of street violence now or at any point in my...
Did I call them the Farage riots? I'm so sorry. I should have said Farage. The Farage riots. I apologise to everybody concerned for that little slip of the tongue.
Isn't he a sanctimonious little piece of work? And I would absolutely love to see Nigel Farage take action, but quite rightly, he's made the point that actually getting involved in that sort of litigation, it takes all of your soul. And believe me, from personal experience, I know that. Here he was on Talk TV this morning.
Incitement.
Yes.
And as a list, still hasn't been answered. And because I asked a simple question, that suddenly becomes incitement.
Yes.
And as a result of this, and as a result of what has been said by some highly irresponsible broadcasters, over the course of the weekend, my security situation has radically changed.
Yes. And isn't it libelous, apart from anything else, some of this stuff?
Well, I've been looking at this. Libel, you have to prove actual harm, actual reputational harm.
Right.
I've fought libel before, actions. I've even fought one against the Times newspaper. I don't know whether you've ever fought one, Mike, but if you do...
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, if you do, it sucks up all of your emotional energy. It can take months out of your life.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee you're going to win. So I've tended to be more the Duke of Wellington, publish and be damned, ignore it and move on. But this is, very nasty indeed.
Yeah, because we've got this terribly polarised world now, haven't we? We've got two-tier society minimum, we've got two-tier policing, we've got two-tier politics, we've got two-tier pretty much everything, two-tier justice. I mean, I'm going to play you from last night, the Walthamstow rally, because of course it's all kumbaya this morning. Everybody's going, oh, isn't it lovely, you know, hate has been beaten.
And we know that hate wasn't beaten. But look, he's made a good point there, I think, Jasmine, hasn't he? But the problem is that it means that James O'Brien continues to get away with spreading egregious lies on air with no consequences because he's left alone by the off-communists, because you know that, again, there's two-tier policing of our mainstream media as well.
Totally, absolutely. And again, I'm reminded of COVID because James O'Brien was screaming during the COVID times that everybody's got to get vaccinated. You know, if you're not vaccinated, you're an anti-vaxxer, you're mad, you're a murderer. And now, again, he is so establishment. He's so absolutely whatever happens to be being pushed at the moment, which I'm sure he would hate to hear, because I'm reminded of what John Lydon said recently, that he couldn't believe, he would have been amazed back in the day to think that in these times it's the right wingers who are sticking a finger at the establishment, but the left wingers are completely solidly establishment types of people, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. They're just doing what they're told. We have now the authoritarian establishment left in government, in media, in education, etc. And as you say, we very much have two-tier policing of the media by Ofcom, which was set up by Tony Blair and is run by his cronies, as far as I can see. So everybody's having a go at GB News, for example, as you say. I mean, they were having a go at it before it even started, trying to abort it before it was birthed, and still continuing, while broadcasters like the BBC, like Sky News, like Channel 4 can get away with absolutely extraordinary amounts of lying and dissimulation.
Yeah, totally agree. Absolutely agree with that. Nick Buckley, where do you stand on this one, James O'Brien versus Nigel Farage?
I think it was predictable. I think we're living in the beginning of an authoritarian state. And
I think we're there, Nick. I actually think we're there.
Possibly, but we're at the beginning of it anyway. You have to be on the side of the state if you want a comfortable life, if you want that promotion, if you want to do well in life. You've got to be part of it, just like we saw in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. I think the only blessing for me is a quote from Star Wars from 1977, where Princess Leia says to Darth Vader, the more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. And that's what we need to do now. They're tightening their grip, and we've got to fight back. We've got to be the rebellion.
But that's why I feel so depressed too. That really the only person who's pointing out the woke Stasi is Elon Musk. Now, thank God we've got him on our side. The richest man in the world, so he doesn't give a damn about two-tier Keir and his free speech threats. But I actually do think we're there, Jasmine. I really do. I know it's only been 4 weeks of this government, but when you really think about what's going on here, it's terrifying. We have the Director of Public Prosecutions warning that just retweeting footage from a riot could see you arrested and then fast-tracked and charged through the system. Well, why? Why?
Yeah.
We have police warning us not to say anything about the events that we see around us. This is absolutely terrifying. I cannot believe that within just 4 weeks there has been an absolute crackdown on free speech, and the mainstream media are just going along with it because they hate the social media companies, because the social media companies are taking away their business. But there's a more important principle at play.
Yes, and I mean, certainly, as you say, we've only had Labour in for 4 weeks, and the rot set in much earlier, of course, under Conservatives. But I am very concerned about Keir Starmer, who, as we know, is a member of the Trilateral Commission, which is kind of World Economic Forum light. He loves the World Economic Forum. As we know, he said on air that he would rather be with Davos than in Westminster. He does seem to be a bully. He's certainly somebody without any charm or nuance. And, you know, as one of your clips showed, he has no intention of dealing with the genuine underlying problems that are hitting all types of communities in this country.
Doesn't even want to talk about it.
No,
doesn't even want to have a discussion about immigration. I find him truly terrifying, actually, because Nick Buckley, come on, there is two-tier policing going on. Why is it, given that we have an absolute hard and fast principle, or what I thought was a hard and fast principle of our Westminster system, a separation of the judiciary, the executive, and the parliament, why is it that Keir Starmer can dictate to the judiciary that actually, if you are a rioter in Southport, you're going to be locked up within 4 days. But if you're a rioter in Hare Hills, who happens to be from a different community, or if you beat up the police at Manchester Airport, your justice is not swift. I mean, I have real issues with that.
Again, this hasn't happened in the last 4 or 5 weeks. This has been going on for decades. We're just beginning to see it now because of Twitter, because things, the lid is off the jar now. So we're seeing everything, some people for the first time, and they're going, wow, this is all new. I've been talking about this for 2 decades. I used to be based in police stations 20 years ago. I saw two-tier policing 20 years ago, not at the level we see now, but it was there then. I think Keir Starmer, and this will be hard to believe, Keir Starmer is terrified. He's scared. Just before the authoritarian state collapses, it gets worse as they try to cling to power. He knows he's hanging on by his fingernails. The elite know all this could come tumbling down very quickly. So they're going into overdrive with more force, more force. They're terrified of us. They're terrified of the British people. We need to remember that. These aren't gods. These are weak people who've been elected. They're easy to overturn.
And of course, there's lots of pressure on the Conservative Party too, who I totally agree deserve lots of the blame for the situation that we've ended up in. But Robert Jenrick, who is the favourite to take on Kemi Badenoch in this race, is, I think, actually saying some good things. But as soon as he speaks about two-tier policing, look at what happens. Sly News comes down on him as if he's committed some sort of offence.
Yourself have tweeted about two-tier policing. As far as I could see, most recently on the 10th of March, does that phrase, two-tier policing, have any application in the last 8 or 9 days?
Well, I have been very critical of the police in the past, particularly around the attitude of some police forces to the protests that we saw since October the 7th. You know, I thought it was quite wrong that somebody could shout
What about the
Allah
last 8 or
Akbar
9 days?
on the streets of London and not be immediately arrested, or project genocidal chants onto Big Ben and that person not be immediately arrested? That attitude is wrong, and I'll always call out the police for it. I think at the moment, the police are doing their very best. You know, we should thank our brave police officers. We should support their efforts. They need now to be arresting the rioters. I want those individuals who've committed these serious crimes to be sent to jail for the longest possible term. I don't think at this moment politicians should be doing anything to make the lives and jobs of our police officers any more difficult than they already are. But there will come a time, once this violence has been quelled, where we can look back and see how well have these matters been handled, have each type of violence, wherever it's come from, been handled with equality, and that is very important.
Yourself.
And Jasmine, of course, he has been completely slammed for that.
Yes. Oh, it's extraordinary because he's just, to my mind, saying what is reasonable, frankly, that we need equality. We need single-tier policing, that, as he says, if somebody is projecting really quite offensive words on Big Ben, then that should be taken into account. I mean, certainly if you're going to be jailing people for some nasty tweet, you're going to have to jail them for putting something unpleasant on Big Ben. So all he's calling for, it seems to me, is equal treatment.
Totally. But the thing is, Nick, this opens up such a can of worms. It's a slippery slope. And I want to give you one more example, Nick, which you can respond to, because we had Lauren Jones today. Now, she is a Labour MP, newly elected for Rochester and Strood, and someone's been doing offence archaeology on this woman. She released a statement saying that she's been made aware of a small number of tweets she posted on Twitter from over a decade ago, which she now deeply regrets. I've seen firsthand the importance of bringing communities together and working with tolerance and respect. Now, the tweets in question, let me show you. There was one where she said, "I want these effing Estonian retards out of my flat now." Another, she said, "Annoyed, card shop was shut and then drunk homeless man deliberately barged into me. Big mistake, gave him massive elbow to the ribs." And then she said, "Baronos Wenthrop texts me from Walthamstow to see he's seen a halal Pakistani Chinese grill place. Hope he's not suggesting we go there." And look, I hate offence archaeology, Nick. I'm actually very opposed to this. She sent these tweets 10 years ago. She was probably in a very different place in her life. I understand all of that, but it's her party who are trying to criminalise this sort of speech, Nick. So surely she has to see the irony. And all Labour MPs should wake up to what they are doing. It's dystopian.
It's worse than that. She probably still believes everything she tweeted 10 years ago. But what's changed now is now she has a job on £92,000 a year. And I will do anything to keep this £92,000 a year job. So if I've got to criticise my tweets from 10 years ago, I'll do it. What else do you want me to do? Do you want me to kneel down? I'll do that. Do you want me to wear the veil? I'll do that. Let me keep my £92,000 a year and let me keep this wonderful job where everyone thinks I'm amazing. Tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. But look, I just think we really need to be thinking about what sort of society we are if we're going to start throwing people in prison for inappropriate tweets. It's ludicrous stuff. But wow, what a brilliant superstar panel. Thank you so much to Nick Buckley and Jasmine Birtles, both making their Outspoken debut. I'd love to have you back soon. Thank you both so much. Now, Matt Le Tissier is standing by. Cannot wait to have Matt on the show for an uncancelled interview in just 1 minute. But first, you know that I'm only going to talk to you about products I really believe in on Outspoken, so I really want to let you know about Verso. I've entered my 40s. The importance of staying healthy as I age has become critical for me, and I've decided to start focusing on prioritising my health so I can stay as fit and sharp as possible while living a good life and still being busy and engaged. I now exercise virtually every day, take my nutrition seriously with the 16/8 fast, but that only gets me so far. Scientists like David Sinclair have proven we can now reverse aging with interventions that go beyond healthy habits. So for me, I wanted a product that I knew would enhance everything I was already doing that is backed up with solid evidence. So I chose Cell Being by Verso. It has scientifically proven ingredients that fight the effects of aging by increasing NAD+ levels. And I've been taking the product now for a number of months at the start of my day. It's been genuinely transformative for me. Fasting is so much easier. I find the 16/8 super easy now, actually. I'm eating less too. The weight is down. I've lost a stone. And I'm sleeping better, waking up with more energy and feeling so much happier too. Basically, it's already taken years off me, and I would love you to experience the same thing. Verso publishes third-party testing from each batch produced to guarantee you are getting what you paid for. Now, I'm very excited to say that to mark the launch of Outspoken, Verso, our very first sponsor, so I love them forever, is giving you an amazing offer. If you head now to buy.ver.so/outspoken, you'll save 15% on your first order. All you have to do is enter the coupon code OUTSPOKEN. The link is right now in our YouTube and Rumble descriptions, but to repeat, bui.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code OUTSPOKEN. But now, back to the show, and it's time for today's uncancelled interview. And it is an absolute delight to have Matt Le Tissier. Of course, you know him best as a football legend, but I knew him best as a warrior for free speech, someone who is prepared to speak up against the narrative, actually at great personal cost to himself. So with everything going on in this country at the moment, I knew I had to have Matt on the show. And Matt, this is becoming more chilling, right? By the day.
Oh, more chilling by the day, and something that we were all warning about 3 or 4 years ago, and these things are just coming true, and it's all happening, just starting to speed up a little bit the last few months, and especially since the Labour government have come in, and yeah, it's pretty spectacular the way it's going, but I'm still pretty confident that they will not win. They cannot win. They will not be allowed to win.
Spectacular for all the wrong reasons. And actually, I knew you'd care about this one. The Daily Telegraph today reporting that a secretive COVID-era spy agency brought in to monitor social media during riots is being used. It's the National Security Online Information Team, which is going to play a central role in response to the violence they say is sweeping the UK. Rupert Lowe, the Reform UK MP, tweeted about this, saying this shady government unit monitoring British citizens needs to be dragged into the light. But what do you make of this? What do you make of the fact that the government is now patrolling our free speech? This is not happening in lots of other Western societies, Matt.
No, it's not. You're right. It is quite chilling the way it's going, and Rupert Lowe has a great point, and I've probably got on with Rupert a lot better the last couple of years than I did when he was chairman of Southampton Football Club when I was playing back in the day. So it's a small world, but we've certainly got.
I forgot there was that connection.
So we've certainly got very similar views on the way the world is going at the moment. That's for sure.
Do you feel scared, Matt? Because I have to be honest, doing what I do, it's really worrying.
No, I do not let fear rule my life in any way, shape, or form.
No, you've proven that.
And I think that's the one piece of advice I would give to somebody when they say, well, you know, what can we do about it? Well, the first thing is don't be afraid for a start, because the people in charge, they prey on your fear. They use that against you. And they want you to be scared. They want you to keep you in a state of fear because it stops you from thinking rationally, stops you from critically thinking. And so, yeah, I decided a long time ago that, I'm not afraid of anything. And as you rightly said, I'm quite happy to put my opinions out there, and to, just to let people know that they won't shut me up, no matter how much they try to cancel me. They're not going to shut me up. I'm not going to stop talking, because I think.
And they have tried, Matt. They have tried.
Oh.
It's interesting,
Trust
isn't it?
Me,
because
they've had a good go.
Yeah, because when you've been a sporting hero, it's interesting, isn't it? It's almost as if people want you to become like an elder statesman where you don't offend anyone. And some people actually are really disappointed when someone like you wades into controversial issues. So I guess in lots of ways it would have been much easier for you to just say, well, I'm a legend, I'll take the coin, I'll keep doing my events, I'll keep talking about football. So what was it that made you actually decide, no, this is far too important for me to stay silent?
What was it? Government overreach into my life. That is the tipping point for me. I want to live my life with as little government interference as possible. And the minute they started telling me I wasn't allowed to leave my house, or I was only allowed to leave my house for 1 hour a day to do some exercise, was a massive overreach, given that what we pretty much knew at the time, that it was for a disease that was no worse than the flu. So that for me was the tipping point of government taking the mickey with their powers. And I'm pleased to say that I didn't really abide by any of the rules. If I'm honest, I didn't wear a mask. I had people around my house all the time, and I don't really care if people want to know about it.
Indeed. And the thing is, if we all took that approach, then actually it would become impossible for this draconian and authoritarian approach to what we do becoming the norm. But I want to show you this clip from Stephen Parkinson, who is now the Director of Public Prosecutions. That's Keir Starmer's old job. And listen to the way that he talks about folk even retweeting information relating to the riots.
The offence of incitement to racial hatred involves publishing or distributing material which is insulting or abusive, which is intended to or likely to start racial hatred. So if you retweet that, then you're republishing that, and then potentially you're committing that offence. And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification, arrests, and so forth. So it's a really, really serious. People might think they're not doing anything harmful. They are, and the consequences will be visited upon them.
The consequences will be visited upon them. Well, Elon Musk responded to that, Matt, by describing it as the woke Stasi. And he always has such a brilliant way, I think, of framing the madness that's going on. He also has the woke mind virus. But let me tell you, Matt, news just breaking from the Cheshire police, who say they have arrested a 55-year-old woman from near to Chester on suspicion of a number of offences in relation to a social media post containing inaccurate information about the identity of the attacker in the Southport murders. The Chief Superintendent, Alison Ross, said, "We have all seen the violent disorder that has taken place across the UK over the past week, much of which has been fueled by malicious and inaccurate communications online. It's a stark reminder of the dangers of posting information on social media platforms without checking the accuracy. It also acts as a warning that we are all accountable for our actions, whether that be online or in person." What is happening to our country? Someone who was a citizen journalist reporting information that they thought to be accurate at the time. This is nuts. I'm genuinely really worried.
It is nuts. You're absolutely right. It's quite shocking what they're trying to do. But it's just absolutely crazy, because they are basically policing your freedom of speech. You know, you should be allowed to view your opinion. I'm a free speech absolutist. Now, I think everybody should be allowed to say anything, because you can't actually offend somebody. You can only take offence, because it's your choice. It's your choice whether you want to.
And daylight is the best disinfectant, right? If you try and cover things up, then 9 times out of 10, we know that there's a reason for it happening. And we're going to be even more interested in the truth, or as you know, as the establishment describe it these days, a conspiracy theory. Because most of these conspiracy theories, Matt, as we've seen over the past few years, end up coming true.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that the people being arrested, the ones for all these crimes, they all seem to be just from one side of the political divide, which is a little bit suspicious.
Very suspicious.
In my eyes, very suspicious. There is two-tier policing without any shadow of a doubt, and perhaps those police officers who are patrolling the internet trying to find a way to be offended and arrest people, perhaps they should be relocated to, I don't know, maybe looking out for grooming gangs and things like that, and the really serious crimes. That would be
gangs,
really useful.
Terrorism, rape, all of those other crimes that have been imported into this country by the day. I couldn't agree more, but I just think we really have to think loud and clear whether we want a society where sending a tweet, or I should now say a post on X, because Elon Musk has done incredible things with the platform, and actually Twitter was all about censorship. Elon Musk is all about free speech absolutism, like your approach, Matt. But if we really want a world where an ordinary person who just happened to be sharing information that they thought was accurate, if they can be arrested, I think we can wave goodbye to our freedom. I think this is already an authoritarian government, actually. I know they've only been in power for 4 weeks. I know we saw a lot of it during COVID under the Conservative Party, but this is ramping up a level. And there's going to be a lot of people like me, Matt, who have to seriously consider, well, is it going to be possible to broadcast truthfully from the UK? Or will I actually have to be broadcasting about the UK from overseas, which is just nuts.
It is absolutely nuts. I don't really know where you're going to go with that. I think we, as you say, disinfectant is you've got to show the light to everybody. And if you do go to a different country, you're almost giving up and letting them win. Whereas if you actually broadcast and then you get arrested and then it comes to light that what you were actually talking about was actually true, then you'll be vindicated. The law will be shown to be an ass, and we can remove that law. So it's an interesting.
Well, I am going to stand fight. I am going to stand fight. But actually, this brings me perfectly, Matt, to talking about our uncancelled after show. So stand by. Don't go anywhere. There's going to be much more from Matt Le Tissier in just a moment. But because of everything that we've been talking about, it's really critical that I have a safe space that isn't patrolled by big tech, where censorship and control runs deep. So that's why we have www.outspoken.live. It's our membership section. Not only do you get half an hour of extra content every single day, you're also protecting me, being able to maintain my free speech and report the truth without all of this censorship which is creeping in. So at this stage, we come off YouTube, we come off Rumble, we move to our own platform to continue our conversation with Matt Le Tissier. All you have to do is sign up right now at www.outspoken.live. Remember, I'm back here every weekday at 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe right now on YouTube and Rumble. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you. See you on the after show with much more from Matt Le Tissier.